Welcome, you guys, to the Live Strong, Love Well podcast. This is season 2, and I'm so excited about my guest. I have a mama named Jaime Hrobar, and she has just the best information for us. So, welcome, Jaime, to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so grateful to be here.
We're so happy to have you. Can you start and tell us just a little bit about your sons and your journey as a mom raising kids with autism and kind of how you knew your family was moving into a higher level of caregiving?
Sure, yeah. I have two boys on opposite ends of the autism spectrum, and so I am quite literally the mom in the middle. And so I have my older son, Jim, who is 21. He has profound level 3 non-speaking autism, and my younger son, Christian, has level 1 autism, extremely high functioning. And so, while they've both had their own share of struggles and some challenges. Jim's needs have been much greater for sure. In terms of when our family knew we were in a crisis level situation, that really that all sort of revolved around Jim and his behaviors. He started very early on, right around the time of his diagnosis, and he was diagnosed extremely early. He was a year and a half old when he was diagnosed with severe autism. And one of the things that I had noticed, in addition to him losing his speech and not imitating anymore, things like that, not looking me in the eyes, no eye contact, no joint attention. In addition to all of that, he was banging his head quite a bit. And so he would bang the back of his head on his crib. And then after that, then he started banging his head directly on the floor, the front of his head. And so there was always, from the beginning of the diagnosis, there was always some level of self-injurious behavior.
Okay. All
He,
right. I want to say something really quickly before Jaime continues. This is a podcast episode that is heavy, guys. We're talking about really serious stuff. We're talking about stuff that's hard and challenging. And we are giving some exceptional information for our mamas and our families in these situations. And so I just want to give you that heads up, but also let you know that the information that Jaime is going to share is life-saving for families. And so we're going to kind of walk through it as gracefully as we can, and as mamas who really, really love our kids and really care about them and really care about our community. So thank you, Jaime.
oh, thank
Um,
you, Sarah. Thank you for bringing that up and calling that to everyone's attention, because this stuff is heavy and it is hard and it is painful. But our family has really come out the other side of it.
yeah,
So
it's a redemption story, and
it
the
is.
information that you have is so important, and the way that you have grown and changed as you've learned and as you've gained more information as a mom, I think is a great um, story for the other moms. And also, it's very inspirational, like we can do
Thank you.
this, and we
Yeah.
all get put in these really tricky situations.
Yeah.
And Jaime's going to give us the information to do the best that we can with our kids. So let me, yeah.
Just to quickly get to that crisis level situation that we found ourselves in, just so folks can understand. So there was always some level of that self-injury, and so Jim wound up getting accepted to a highly specialized school. By the time he was 2 years old, it was a private school for individuals with autism, where he received tons and tons of therapy, and they were absolutely trying their best to help Jim and our family. And while there were many successes in that area, we would take a few steps forward and then a ton of steps back. It was this back and forth. And long story short, despite that very intensive intervention, and there came a point where things were getting kind of dangerous, that we needed to consider medication, despite all of those efforts and our family being consistent and implementing therapy at home, all of these things, right? Despite all of that, it was getting worse and worse and worse. And so we did find ourselves in a crisis level situation.
Okay. All right. We're going to talk about that in a second. When our kids are little, the behaviors seem very manageable,
Mm.
right? And we brush them off sometimes even as phases. Looking back, what were some earlier signs? And you've talked about a few of them, but if there's anything else, uh, that gave you some ideas that this is going to be more than just behaviors that we're having to manage and a phase that Jim is going to grow out of.
Yeah, I would say, one of the differentiators that I try to explain to people when they ask me, they'll say, well, like what were some of the signs, some of the symptoms that you noticed early on with your kid, in terms of autism. And I used to say, oh, well, he would spin in circles initially, and they would say, well, all kids spin in circles, and they do, right? Lots of kids spin in circles. The
Yeah,
the issue is it's the degree to which the individual is engaging in these behaviors, right? So
right.
the head banging became more severe. His concept, his understanding of danger, that became very apparent to me that he did not understand danger. I mean, he was climbing on all sorts of things. He didn't understand that the stove was hot. If a candle was lit, even if he touched it and got a little, he'd go back to it.
Mm,
Things were not computing, for lack of a better way to say it. He was not understanding that concept of danger. He was not understanding that, that the water was hot when he turned. I mean, we were always on high alert. And
mhm.
so,
Okay, so
yeah,
so repetitious behaviors are stemming
yes.
patterns of behavior like that that seem more intense and continue to intensify.
Yeah, the
A
increase
lack
in
of
frequency and
right,
duration,
and
right? That's
duration,
what we're talking about. Frequency and duration.
right? A lack of awareness of danger and maybe even a different tolerance in pain.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because, when you have a kid like Jim, who was, and I'm sure we're going to get into the severity of his behaviors, but, there's no way that he wasn't feeling the pain
Right,
differently than I would have.
right.
There was a time, he was maybe, 8 or 9, and he was downstairs in the playroom, and I was upstairs in the kitchen, and all of a sudden he came running he had come up the stairs, ran through the kitchen, and I didn't even know that he had gotten hurt. There was no sound, there was no nothing,
Right.
but there was blood all over the floor, and he had fallen through a glass table, like a little glass coffee table. And I mean, no, nothing, no, nothing,
Yeah.
Of course, we got him checked out and everything like that, but his pain tolerance is definitely different.
Okay. So, Jamie, for families listening right now who may be dealing with self-injury, aggression, or property destruction right now, what are some red flags or signals that it's time to seek a higher level of support? And when we talk about a higher level of support, what exactly are we talking about? I know those are two questions. So let's look at what are some of the red flag signs that says like, hey, let's get prepared ahead of time
Yeah.
before we
Yeah.
have a major something that we don't know what to do.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. There's a lot in those questions, and it's so important that you're asking them. I'm so grateful. Really, I'm so grateful to be able to talk about this stuff because there were not many people out there talking about this stuff as I was going through it with Jim years ago. I would say some of those red flags are things that we've already touched on. An increase and frequency and duration of these behaviors. Are they getting the frequency and duration, but are they even getting stronger?
Mm,
Is it,
yeah.
are there more body parts involved now? Is the aggression becoming more, and
Like
have I,
frantic or like there's like this something behind it. It's like
Yes.
this level of something that's changed a bit that you can feel
Yes.
as a mom, right?
Also, has a functional behavior assessment been conducted, right? Like there's certain things that we want to be doing to get to the bottom of some of these behaviors. So let's say a functional behavior assessment looks at why these behaviors are occurring, because all behavior is occurring for out of four
For a
functions,
reason,
really,
right?
right?
They're trying to communicate something, right?
Yes. And so, have we taken those kinds of steps to figure out what's causing it, and have we tried to implement an effective treatment plan? Has medication been introduced? Despite intensive intervention plans and therapies, is it continuing to get worse, right? Because it is scary, but I feel like charged to say this and put this out there. When things reach such a dangerous level, um, the system is set up in such a way that our kids sort of have to traverse a certain number of steps in order to like get to a higher level of treatment and help, and care. So it's best to start sooner than later.
Mm-hmm.
And there are waiting lists out there for many of
Yes,
these
let's thank you.
inpatient facilities.
Yeah.
And so
Can
people,
you get on the waiting list? Can you get on the waiting list? Let's say I have a 9-year-old
Mhm.
who's increasing intensity and duration, who is doing the things that you said to kind of look out for. Can I call and get on the waiting list now, even though we haven't had a major
Sure.
event?
So I can only speak from my experience, and also I want to make it very clear to everybody, I am not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional. I
You
can,
are an expert because you're a mom, but you're right.
but
You're not a
but
medical professional, right?
but I have quite a long list of experience, and as some experts in the field have said, I have street credit.
Right. Yeah, totally.
That's what they've
You're an
told
OG
me.
mom. That's what we
Yeah,
call
that's
us.
what they've
Right.
told me. So let me sort of explain what that looked like for us.
Yeah. And what the
Um,
process is, and like what is the next level of care for the people
sure.
listening who don't actually know.
Okay. So Jim went to a hospital called Kennedy Krieger Institute. It's in Baltimore, Maryland. And what happened was we applied, Jim's behaviors were so severe. So I'm going to put it in perspective for people so that they can try to like wrap their head around what we're talking about here. Um, at the worst of it, Jim was engaging in self-injurious behavior, on average 40,000 times to his own body a month. So
Yeah.
about 10,000 hits to his own body a week, to the point where I had to have an app created to be able to track it all, because I'm trying to like, restrain him and manage him, and I've got clickers, and I'm trying to keep track of all this data, and also keep myself safe and everybody else safe. So that's the level of severity we're talking about. I had been given concussions. I had had my jaw dislocated. I mean, this is real stuff.
Right.
This is real stuff, and it's hard stuff. And if you're out there and you're a parent that is struggling with this, I want you to know that you are not alone, and there is
Not
help
alone.
out there.
Yes.
For real, there is. But this is you're not alone, but this is very real, serious stuff. And so we have to treat it seriously. And wishing it away and all of that that was not possible for our family. If that could have been the case, it would have been handled a long time ago. So, um, anyway, we were instructed to apply to Kennedy Krieger.
What type
So
of facility is that for our listeners?
so it's a hospital. It's a very specialized hospital, and within that hospital, there is a neuro-behavioral unit.
That's what I wanted to say. Neuro-behavioral unit.
It's a neurobehavioral unit. If I remember correctly, they have about 16 beds, and they have a very long waiting list. And there are not tons of hospitals like this out there, I'm going to be
Right.
honest. And so
Right.
that are as specialized and as qualified to deal with these specific behaviors.
Hmm.
So I say that because I have so many families reach out to me and they say, I don't know if I, am ready for that, but I don't know what's going to happen, and this is so dangerous. And my advice to families is always the same. If it is that dangerous and it is that serious, and you have tried all of these things that I've been talking about,
Hmm.
and there have been, probably some hospitalizations here and there,
Right,
emergency room visits, right? I mean,
right,
we all know what I'm talking about.
right.
If that has all been the case and it is not improving, my suggestion is to fill out an application, and if accepted, get on the waiting list for facilities like this. Because here's the reality of it. I said there are 16 beds on that unit. A typical stay in that unit is about, if I remember correctly, and maybe things have changed, but probably about 4 to 6 or 7 months. So think about, how many individuals can they actually serve in a year, right? And these people are so incredible and so dedicated. They don't discharge a patient unless behaviors are,
Right.
extremely.
Unless it's controlled and manageable and it's safe
Right.
to go home. Right.
Right. So to think that you're gonna get on the waiting list or fill out an application and your kid's going tomorrow, that's not happening.
Right.
So my
Which is
my
why we're having this podcast, because we have to know the information so that we can prepare and be as ready as we can.
That's right. And so we filled out the application. I'm going to tell you what that looked like. We filled out the application. We were accepted to the program. They told us our wait would be at least a year.
Okay.
And I am a very proactive individual. As I mentioned, Jim was diagnosed at a year and a half. He has seen all of the best doctors. I mean, he has been seen by world-renowned specialists. I waited too long to apply.
Mm,
And I say that because I want to save other families some of the heartache and the dangerous situations that we went through, that Jim
yeah.
went through,
Yeah, I appreciate that.
and that's very important. I do believe in my heart of hearts that I waited too long because I was afraid. Who's gonna take care of him the way? No one's gonna take care of him the way I do, right? He can't communicate. I was scared about that. How am I going to leave him? He's going to think I left him. I deserted him. All of these fears.
Yeah.
The reality is that place saved his life.
Yeah.
And I get very emotional when I talk about this, so forgive me if I start crying, but they saved his life and they saved ours. And
Right.
have we had ups and downs and a few moments of backsliding and things like that? Yes, absolutely. And the reality is that's life.
Right.
Nothing is perfect, but I will tell you, he is in the best spot that he has been in his entire life. His self-injury is nearly non-existent today.
Yeah.
And that's a miracle.
Yeah.
So again, we're talking about some very heavy things, but there is hope out there, and I want people to know that. While we were waiting that year for the bed, we were
Mm-hmm.
responsible for providing monthly data.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to be, weekly tracking all of the data because they want updates and all of this.
Right.
And so it is highly involved.
Mm-hmm.
I will also say I didn't just drop him off there. They are such an incredible facility, and so they're working with the child, and then I was flying up there. Some parent I stayed at the Ronald McDonald House for a good portion of the time. I had to go back and forth because I had another child. There were some parents that stayed. There were some parents that couldn't be there as often as some of us could. We all just did the best we could for our kids, which is what I think all of us are trying to do.
Yes, it's what we're all trying to do. Just a quick, like, for my curiosity, um, what specific things are they doing in a neurobehavioral unit?
Sure, that's a great question. So what I think makes Kennedy Krieger so special is there are highly trained therapists and specialists and doctors there, in the field of applied behavioral analysis, world-renowned doctors. And so they're observing the behaviors, They're
Hmm.
doing their own functional behavior assessments. They're getting down to, why are these behaviors occurring? Jim, for example, some individuals might engage in self-injury aggression for one out of the four functions of behavior. And for anyone who doesn't know what those are, there's attention, there's escape, there's access to tangibles, and then there's a sensory automatic piece. And that's usually the hardest one to deal with
Right. Yeah.
because it's self-serving, right?
Right.
The behavior itself is
And you kind of
reinforced.
have to know what's going on. Right.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So for anyone that doesn't know about that, so
Yeah.
what
Thank
they
you.
do is they will put the individual, they put my son in a lot of situations where
Hmm.
they need the behavior to occur, unfortunately, right? Because
Right.
they got to understand why.
Hmm.
So they did that in with their folks. Then I came in and they put me in situations with him to see when the behavior, right? Because sometimes as parents, we think we're doing the right thing, but sometimes we're inadvertently reinforcing a behavior and we don't even know it,
Yeah. That's so
you know,
true. That's so
because
true. Yeah.
we don't understand the function of that behavior.
Right.
We just see our kids in distress and I gotta help,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. And that happens with normal moms too, right? Like, so it's a very
So
typical thing.
yes.
Yeah.
And so here's an example of that for anyone that doesn't know what I'm talking about. Here's a real easy one. If Jim was a young kid and he was sitting on the couch and he starts hitting himself in the head, right? And I don't know, the doctors after watching, they can tell me that the function of in that particular situation was to get my attention, right? And I don't realize that. He's sitting there going like this. I go, oh my gosh, he's hitting himself. And I run over, right? Now I've inadvertently reinforced that behavior. What did he,
Exactly.
I
Yeah. And
hit
he's going to do it
myself,
harder
he
next
comes
time.
running,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So this is why we need trained eyes,
Hmm.
qualified professionals watching for this stuff. So they do all of that. They figure out Jim, it was found, was engaging in self-injury, unfortunately, for all four functions of behavior. So very serious. And so he had a very involved treatment plan. But I'm happy to report that it's been beautiful and we still carry it out today.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. Wherever your child ends up, if they have to go to one of these types of facilities or just in therapy, whatever it is, it's so important to be consistent. That
Hmm.
is so critical because we can undo things very quickly. So they did all of that testing with him, and what makes the hospital so special is they start to develop a behavior plan. They start tweaking and figuring out what's working. Um,
Hmm.
they're also, while they're doing that, they're monitoring medications and they're doing medication trials, and so that what they're able to then do is, everybody's on the same page. They're graphing it all together, and they can see what's working and what's not. Because how many of us take our kids to the doctors or we're on the phone with the psychiatrist or whatever and we're going, well, this is happening. Okay, well, let's take that out, try this, throw this on.
Yes. So
Right?
everybody's on the same team from every
Yes.
discipline,
Yeah.
and we're all working together and noticing when something's different, how it affects the other areas. And I think
Yes.
that's like so important. It's like
Yes.
coordinated medical care, which we it's like seems like so hard to do, but
Yeah. So they
Kennedy
do
Krieger's
that.
doing it right, and
Oh,
neuro-behavioral units are doing that
yes.
for our families and for our kiddos.
Yes. So they're doing that. In addition to that, they for someone like my son Jim and as I saw for some other patients there, they're introducing some different types of protective gear, protective supports. Not only for the patient, I have a helmet.
Yeah.
I have a helmet at home that I'm grateful I haven't had to wear in a very long time.
Mhm.
Look at those dimples. But there were times, there was a long time where I would literally just be spending the day in my house in a helmet.
Yeah.
Because it was so explosive, it was so unpredictable. And so I also had to be protected, right? Because if something happens to me, I can't take care
Right.
of him.
Yeah. So as a mom of a kiddo with different medical stuff, it's very emotional for me to hear that, and it from a mom heart perspective, I just, like I'm just, my heart goes out to you. Can we talk a little bit about what that feels like as a mom and say maybe some of the stories that are running through your head as you're in that kind of situation, just so the moms that are feeling it now don't feel crazy, right? And
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
like normal, that these are normal human emotions and responses to a very difficult situation.
Yeah. I can, one example that comes to mind immediately, and I was actually just talking about this with someone yesterday. So Jim has had a lot of medical issues. He's had a lot of GI issues. I know a lot of our kiddos have those.
Mm-hmm.
He's had seizure disorders, all sorts of things. And I think one of the best ways for me to sort of illustrate that I understand what other moms or parents, dads, are feeling in those moments, right? When our kids are hurting and things like that. Jim needed to have an MRI one time. And I mean, he's had a few, all sorts of things we've had, but he was having an MRI one time, and just to get blood work for our kids, right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
excruciating. Jim used to have ketamine to get an X-ray.
Yeah. I had a whole conversation with the mom about just trying to get a urine sample the other day.
Yeah,
It took a few days.
exactly. So he was, if he was having blood work done as a 9-year-old, it took like 6 people to pin him
Yeah.
down, right? And
Yeah.
the fight or flight and the sweating, and you're watching this, right? Well, anyway, he had to have this MRI, and they had to give him propofol. And I have been blessed to have a wonderful support team. Jim has been so blessed to have so many people in our lives, and so I used to say they're like his entourage. When we'd go for a medical procedure, they'd all come with us, therapists and that sort. Um,
Yeah.
and this one time, I was actually instructed to leave the building, like not the floor,
Yeah. Like get
the
out of here.
room, not the floor. I had to leave the building because the screams were so bad. He was in such distress and he was so afraid. And so for anyone that is experiencing any parents that are experiencing this, like I see you, and I feel you, and I know what that's like.
And
Uh,
all those feelings are normal,
oh my
right?
gosh.
Like
You know,
everything's normal. Like being scared, feeling like you don't want to do this anymore, maybe even hating your kid for the situation of what's going on, of wishing that it were different. Like all of those feelings are very normal.
I mean, you and I were talking about this earlier before we started recording, and there were times where, things were so dangerous and so much, so overwhelming. I was on high alert all the time. I was in my own fight or flight. And there were many days where I would just be counting the hours to bedtime. Like I would just
Yeah.
be and that is the truth. And I don't know what I said. I don't know. I sound like I was a very tired mom,
Yeah.
doing my best. Jim, for almost 13 years, Jim only slept for about 2 to 3 hours a night. And so I
Yeah.
was literally bouncing off of the walls,
Yeah.
and right. So I'm bouncing off the walls, and I know we all know about this. So let's just put it out there so everyone can feel seen and heard. I'm bouncing off the walls. I'm advocating. I'm doing therapy. I'm trying to restrain my kid from hurting himself. I'm driving a car with him in the car going like, are we gonna
Right.
make it to the grocery store? Like, is this
Yep.
safe? I
Yep.
mean, I knew it wasn't, but I mean, I had to get, what was I gonna do? Um, and so this is real stuff. And
It's your
for
life and we
anyone
keep
that's out
going.
there that thinks you're the only one out there that this is happening to, you are not. But there is help out there.
Yeah. So
Uh,
what does help or
yeah.
support look like for a mom like you? What does help and support look like? And I know you talked about Jim's team, and that is definitely helpful and supportive for caregivers, but what did help look like for you? What changed things for you, Jamie? Now we're talking about the good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. There's so many things that have changed for me in my life. I will say, while it was Jim's team, a lot of those people, We had therapists in our home, and again, I know that we are very fortunate, but
Mhm.
we did have therapists in our home pretty much, or Jim at therapy clinic from the time he was 2 until he was, 21.
Right.
They were involved in our daily life.
Yeah, same.
And
Yeah.
so many of them became like family.
Family.
I don't even like to say like family, they became
They
family.
are family,
They
right?
are family.
Yeah.
And I still communicate with a lot of them today. So that was, one thing. The second thing that happened was I started a blog. Right before Jim went to Kennedy Krieger, I started a blog because I was feeling alone and I didn't know how to deal with all of this, and I needed some kind of an outlet. And so I started a blog on Facebook called Homebound and Healing, and people started following, and they would, get involved in our life, and so we have built this community, and I started following other pages because I didn't know all these people were out there. And so I found my tribe. I found my tribe,
Yeah.
and people that are connected at the heart through our experience.
Right.
So I found my tribe there. The other two other amazing things that happened in my life is I got sober. I got
Yeah.
sober, and I was a former atheist, and I have come to I have a personal relationship with a higher power today, and that has made all of the difference because I'm never alone today.
Yeah.
I'm never alone today. And so between, the community out there of people in the autism community and my recovery community and God in my life, and when I say God, that's what I choose to call my higher power.
Right.
I don't care
Yeah.
what
A
anybody
higher
calls,
power. Yeah.
he,
Yeah.
she, it, whatever, doesn't matter to me. The ocean, the whatever, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But that is something that I have found so much peace and comfort and grace in. So
I love
yeah.
that. So building community, asking for help, and helping others are the ways that we get out of it. It seems so simple, and I know it wasn't simple.
Mhm.
But that's the same story we get from every mom of like, how are we living our best life? And that's how we build community. We ask for help, which
Yes.
is I think the hardest thing for us is to ask for help. And then we help others. And that was what you were doing with your homebound and healing. And so
I have just found that the best way to get out of me is to help somebody else. And
totally,
I'm just
love
so
in action is
grateful.
service. Yeah,
Yeah, and
love
I'm
in
just
action
so
is
grateful
service.
that so many families do reach out to me, and they'll ask me to sit in on their IEP meetings or whatever.
Yeah,
And it's just it's a wonderful way to live.
I
It's
love
a
that.
wonderful
I
way to
love
live.
that.
Yeah.
If you could talk to a mom right now who is in a situation and is lying awake at night, just not knowing what to do, what would you say from like your heart to her heart? That's a
I
tricky
would,
one.
it is a tricky, it is, but it isn't, right? Um, I would first and foremost say that you are not alone, that there are so many of us out there, just in these communities, online, in support groups. There are so many of us living a life like this. And I know different aspects of autism are talked about, in the media, and I think a lot of people a lot of families feel unheard or not seen. And so, I'm again as the mom in the middle who understands all sides of it.
Yeah, I
I
love that.
understand all sides of it because
Yeah.
for my younger son, who is, kind of quirky and just so artistic and into facts and history and I mean, he's just so brilliant, all of that. But I also understand the families that are like, this is not my kid's superpower.
Right.
This is not. This is dangerous, and my heart is hurting because my 21-year-old to this day, despite everything we've done, and we have done it all,
Yeah, you have.
you know He still needs assistance with all daily living skills.
Yeah.
And I have still had to face some very difficult situations with him, including a residential placement for a short time, that was not a good experience. And so, I really am the mom in the middle. I understand all sides of it. I really do. And you are not alone, and there is help out there. And I know it's scary to make phone calls and do your research. And, sometimes we don't even want to like Google it, right? We don't even want to look up what that
Yeah.
thing is. I
Because
don't
then it
want to know
makes it
anything about
real.
that
Yeah.
hospital.
Yeah.
It was kind of like after my divorce, it was kind of like I don't want to know anything about online dating. I haven't dated in however long. I don't want to look that up. You know, I don't want to know about those kind of hospitals. They
Yeah.
scare me.
So true.
Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
but uh,
So you're
but
not
but it's
alone.
important. It's
Yeah.
important to do your research and find people that get it.
Yeah.
Because not everybody gets it. Not
Yeah. So
everybody
true.
not everybody has a kid that engages in self-injury or
Yeah,
aggression.
and you need someone who gets it, right? Like, I mean, I'm thinking
I
about
do.
myself and like I need to talk to a mom who understands like the lifting and carrying, like the physical aspect of the job. Like
I
you
need
need
the
a mom,
identification,
right?
right?
We
I
need
need the
someone.
identification because I need to see myself in you, right? Because then your experience and strength can give me that hope.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're not speaking my language,
Yeah.
if you've never had, I think
I
about
have never, right? No, and that's the thing. And so I would have no skill set to help you, and you would have no skill set to help me in that situation. And so it is important
yeah,
that you find people who
that are
can
going
truly
through this.
support you, who are going through the same thing or who understand what you're going through so that they can, they can meet you where you need to be met.
Yeah.
So I love that.
And another thing I would say, going back to that whole point about being on waiting lists and things like that. And again, I should say in a lot of cases, when you apply to places like this, they are going to want to see that you've tried many
Right,
other things. Like you don't just get to go, well, my kid's hitting himself and I'd like to come to your hospital. It doesn't work that way. There's a series of events, unfortunately, that kind of have to take place before you can get into a place like that, right?
right.
But while getting on the waiting list and all of that is very scary, and I can fully appreciate it because I'll tell you this, I waited a year for that bed. And the day they called me to tell me that the bed was ready, you could have given me 10 years to prepare for that bed. It
You
was
weren't ready.
I
Right,
wasn't ready. I wasn't
right.
ready. Get on the waiting list, but also while it is scary, the thought of handing your child over for a short term, to try to get these things under control. The hope is that they'll be able to come home and stay home for a good long time, right?
Right.
Because, while there are good group home, there are good group homes out there and there are good residential facilities out there and all of that. I'm not saying that there aren't. But for kids like Jim, my son is nonverbal. He has a device that he is learning to use, but for the most part, he's nonverbal. And he can only communicate certain types of things. And as a nonverbal individual, as a vulnerable individual like that,
Yeah,
who
thank you.
has a history of self-injurious behavior and aggression, he is at a huge risk for physical and sexual abuse. And I'm
Right.
just going to come out and say it because that is the truth.
Yeah, yes.
And so, you know, I want Jim home with me and safe with me for as long as possible. And that is the truth because we had a bad experience.
Yeah.
Um,
All of our kids are at a incredibly high risk to be
I mean,
abused
that's just the
physically and
truth,
sexually. Right.
and I care about people enough these days to tell them the truth rather than worrying about hurting their feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that. And you and I, y'all, for my listeners, Jamie and I didn't know each other before this. And so thank you, Live Well, Love Strong, for bringing us this beautiful mama who has such a beautiful heart and just knows so much. But we had a whole conversation about that when we first met, because that is something that keeps me up at night of like, how do I keep Mary Elizabeth safe? She's nonverbal, same thing. She's strapped to a wheelchair. Like, and so those are things that we don't talk about in our community. We talk about that way less than we even talk about our feelings. And
Yeah.
so I'm glad that that we're saying that out loud, and that it's something that I know we're all aware of, but put a little more emphasis on it of like, hey, keep your eyes open. Right. Like you have to be very, very, very aware.
Yeah, and that's something I would say to families also in terms of any type of hospitalization and also any type of residential placement. Being involved. I was at the hospital weekly. I was able to go. We were able to send me quite frequently to be able to go to check my son to make sure he was eating. All of those things.
Hmm.
And also at the residential facility that he was at for a short time, because we were visiting often, we were able to pay attention. We were able to catch on that some things were not right. And so
Right.
when we realized they were not right, he was brought home immediately.
Right.
And I don't want anyone to think, that residential placement was the hardest to. I mean, that was way harder than Kennedy Krieger,
Yeah.
and that was the hardest decision I ever had to make in my life. I was unfortunately in a position where I didn't have a choice for a minute, but you know, we have moved on, and he is in a great place, and there is a lot of grief and there is a lot of heartache, and I think it is important that we talk about things like that. My other advice to families, and I'm not telling anyone how to grieve or not or anything like that. I can tell you what has worked for me and what we say in our house. It's important to grieve, it's important to feel our feelings, all of that, right? But I try not to put up a mailbox there
Say
because
more.
that doesn't help me. I can feel it, I could sit with it for a little bit, and then I got to move on.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it's not there, right? It's in there, but I can't stay there because
Yeah, I feel the
staying
same
there,
way. Yeah. If it
yeah,
looks like I'm doing okay on the outside, just know that there's grief still going on in the inside. Same thing, because I
yeah.
can't stay there either. If I stay still for too long,
No,
be able to
because
get so anxious.
I'm not of service to Jim or others when I'm staying there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't feel it because I feel it. That's a
Yeah.
heartache that's never gonna go away. But we've learned to adjust what our life is going to look like, and I think
Hmm.
we do our best to stay present and connect and meet
Yeah.
Jim where he is,
Yeah.
and just keep hoping and not we have never given up. We continue
Yeah.
to push,
Yeah.
and he's doing the best he ever has. So I'm very grateful.
I love that. Okay, Jamie, last question, and I ask all my guests this.
Okay.
What are you doing right now? This could be fun, it could be serious, could be whatever, to live well and love strong.
I think that's my favorite question today.
Good.
Um,
Right? It's
you
mine
knew
too.
it would be, right? You knew it would be. What am I doing? Boy, I do a lot of different
I
things.
know, I
I
know.
do I do a lot of
I like you so much. I know.
yeah. So what am I doing? I'm helping other families. I'm continuing to advocate for families because that is just so near and dear to my heart. I remember what it was like when we were going through these things. So,
Hmm.
I'm doing that. I am doing lots of prayer and meditation and sound baths and exercise and I'm big in my recovery community. I'm being of service and I'm being present and I'm staying connected to my higher power. And when I'm doing all that, life is great. And I'm in the middle of book.
I
And
know. I'm so excited.
so there's tons of projects, and
Yeah.
uh, there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of really good work to be
there's
done.
a lot
And
of
I
good
am
work.
so grateful for you for being
Uh,
part of one of the people that's doing that work. And so,
I'm grateful for you for creating a space for conversations like this,
yeah,
because it is important and some people are really afraid to talk about it. And I was, you know, throughout the years on my blog, I would try to be careful, but speak about my son with dignity and all
right.
of
Yeah,
that,
it's
and
very
as
tricky.
a human, but also give you the reality,
Right,
because I knew there were people out there like us.
right,
Not every individual with autism is like my son Christian. They're not.
right. And a lot of kids with that don't have autism and have something else
Mhm.
present this way as well. And so
Yeah,
it's just right.
absolutely. So thank you for giving a voice. I think over the last couple of years, um, topics like this are starting to get discussed.
Yeah.
There are some people out there that are really bringing attention to it, and it's important because there are families out there that have felt alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
And
thank you.
nobody shows up at your door, right? I mean, I always say this. When you have a kid like Jim,
Hmm.
nobody shows up at your door with a binder this big that says, here's what you need to do. These are the lawyers you're going to need to call. These are the kind of doctors you're going to need, these therapies. You should know what the functions of behavior are. Like no one's going to tell you.
Yeah.
Make sure that these supports are included in their IEPs, and you can, don't let a school district tell you that the device has to be turned in for the summer. Like, I mean,
Yeah. So
so much
good.
out there, right?
There
That
is so much out there.
nobody comes and gives it to you all in one place.
Yeah, that's
And
so
so
true.
this whole like playing detective, and
It
we've got,
really is. And yeah, we talk about that. Like we are much luckier now than we were 20 years ago. And the moms that I know that were doing it 20 years ago, because we
yeah,
do have access to a lot of information.
yeah,
Um, and yet it's still not out there in an easy way to find. And
it's so true.
so we're hoping bit by bit with your blog, with what I'm doing, with what other moms and other people are doing, that it becomes easier and easier to find the information and the
Yeah,
support and the care that you need. And so tell us really quick, Jamie, and I'm going to post this in the show notes, guys, where to find you and
sure,
where to
sure.
find the information that you're sharing.
Okay, yeah. Well, you can find me over at my website, which is jaimehrobar.com. The spelling is a little
I
crazy.
said Hrobar. Did I
Yes.
say it right?
No, you said it great. It's perfect. Yeah. So it's JAIMEHROBAR.com. That's my website. Or you can find me over at Homebound and Healing on Facebook. We're an active and engaged community over there, and
Love it.
there's a
Love it.
lot of support over there. Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm just so
awesome.
grateful to you for having me.
Thank you. Thank
Oh,
you. Thank you, Jamie. It was so fun.
thank
Not
you.
fun, but you know what I mean.
You
I'm
know
gonna
what? But we do, there are smiles
I'm
going.
gonna edit that out. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe we'll leave it. But you're right. That's what I was talking about yesterday. I had a hard morning yesterday, and my friend was like, "Make sure you laugh today. Like, go find somebody silly, watch something stupid and silly or funny, and laugh." And you're right. We did laugh a lot.
There's something very important that I have learned. I will say I have always been able, humor in our house has been paramount
Same. Same. Yeah.
because we deal with some very hard things.
Yeah.
And I have learned through my recovery. I didn't realize it. I mean, I guess I was doing it all along, but it's really clear. I can name it now.
Yeah.
Uh, Joy and sorrow can exist at the same time in my house.
Yeah. And
And
they do
I
often.
think that's important,
Yeah.
because if I was just doom and gloom all of the time, you'd be having a very different conversation with a very, well, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation.
Right. Right.
So,
Yeah.
it's very important to laugh,
Yeah.
and it's okay to,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
And we should. We should be trying.
oh,
Really. We
you
should be
know,
trying.
I remember being a kid, a young kid going to my grandma's house, and she had all these in her sitting room. She had all these books and magazines, and she had a stack of readers. And I remember the laughter is the best medicine, little section. And
Yeah.
I used to be like, I don't really get what that means, because I was a young kid. Today I
Yeah.
get it. Today,
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. All
Yeah.
right. Well, thank you, Mama. I appreciate you so
Thank
much.
you.
And yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right.